Hi, I'm Anna Brown from Katie Budget Books. This is our series We Love YA panel. I am so excited to be doing this tonight. We were just talking before we launched about how exciting it's been during this time to be able to get together groups of authors that we wouldn't be able to get together necessarily all at the same time in store to do these sorts of things. And this is one of those things. I love it. And these really are all series we love, you guys. So I am so excited about the authors we have for you tonight. One of our authors is running just a few minutes late, but she is coming. So the authors with us tonight are Tracy Wolf, Judy Lin, Amina Mae Safi, and Aileen Erin will be joining us in just a few moments. And I am so stoked about all of these books. Aileen was actually supposed to be the first author I did a full introduction for, so we're gonna skip over her for right now. Oh, and we're using Zoom webinar. So if this is your first time as an attendee at a webinar, we can't see or hear you so that you can see and hear us. But there is a Q&A box function somewhere on your screen, wherever your menu is, depending on what kind of device you are using, or you can put questions in the chat and I'll be monitoring that also. So we're going to skip Aileen for just a moment, and we're going to start with Judy Lin, who was born in Taiwan and immigrated to Canada with her family at a young age. She grew up with her nose in a book and loved to escape to imaginary worlds. She now works as an occupational therapist and still spends her nights dreaming up imaginary worlds of her own. She lives on the Canadian prairies with her husband and daughter. The Book of Tea duology is full of love and magic and intrigue, and I absolutely adore the first book, A Magic Steeped in Poison, which is coming March 29th. And good news for all you voracious readers, the second book is coming this year too on August 23rd. It's such a unique storyline. I love it so much. And so Judy, do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, hi everyone. Thank you for the introduction. A Magic Steeped in Poison is a Song Dynasty inspired young adult fantasy. So in certain period of ancient China, and it follows a commoner, Ning, a reluctant practitioner of tea magic, and she has to travel to the capital to participate in a magical tea competition because she wants a favor from the princess to save her dying sister. So that's my debut novel, so I'm hoping that everyone will enjoy it when it comes out.
Congratulations on your debut. That's super exciting.
Oh,
Huge.
thank you.
Congrats. Yeah.
And you are starting off with a bang. It is so good. I am so mad that I can't get access to the second book yet, which I understand reasons, but like, I wanted the next one right away.
That's high praise. Yeah.
Well, we don't have to wait too long. So it's, I think I hear a lot of people are very excited that it's not too long of a gap between the first and the second. So we will be out soon.
Yes. Okay, and next is Amina Mae Sophie. She's a Muslim American writer. She was the winner of the We Need Diverse Books short story contest, and that story appeared in the anthology Fresh Ink. She lives in Los Angeles, California with her partner and cat. Travelers Along the Way, a Robin Hood remix, is her fourth YA novel after Not the Girls You're Looking For, Tell Me How You Really Feel, and This Is All Your Fault. Travelers Along the Way is the third installment in the Remixed Classics series. It's a series of reimaginations of classics with all the diversity we crave, written by different authors. The series begins with So Many Beginnings by Bethany C. Morrow and A Clash of Steel by C.D. Lee. And Amina's book is a retelling of Robin Hood set in the Holy Land with great friendships, a little bit of love, and a whole lot of adventure. It's coming March 1st. Amina, will you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes. Travelers Along the Way is my Robin Hood remix, which is so much fun to tell. So it's a story of the Crusades from the other side. And I get to make Robin Hood on the other side, and I gender swapped her, so her name's Rahma, and my story is also about sisters, and this sort of like chaotic good sister with a justice good sister who are constantly butting heads about how you're supposed to do things the right way, which was super fun. And it's just a story of the travelers along the way and finding your tribe and kind of picking up this band of merry misfits and trying to do some good in the world and take back kind of the power that feels like it was never yours, but you want to try and do something big and good with it when you're a young woman and trying to figure out your way in the world, which is fun. I wanted to write a sort of swashbuckling, classical idea of that, like Robin Hood character, and that sort of like never the biggest, never the strongest, never the fastest, but like always the cleverest and always willing to solve the problem and not quit. I think that was always my favorite thing about Robin Hood is sometimes Robin Hood loses the fight, but then charms the other person and they're like, well, we're best friends now. And I love that. They're like, wow, you're a really good fighter and you beat me. Do you want to be best friends? And they're like, yep, we're best friends right now. So yeah, it was fun, and it was fun to write the villain, and it was fun to interject all of this history that I love because I'm a trained art historian. So that was the first time I got to like draw on that degree. So yeah, it was just, I wanted a fun adventure and a good time while we were kind of locked inside for a bit. So I lived in this world.
Yeah, and it really is a lot of fun. I enjoyed it so much.
Thank you.
And then Tracy Wolf is a New York Times and USA Today bestselling author. She wrote her first short story, Something with a Rainbow and a Prince, in second grade. By 10, she'd read everything in the young adult and classics section of her local bookstore. A one-time English professor with more than 50 novels to her name, she now devotes most of her time to writing and dreaming up heroes. She also writes under the name Tracy Deeds and lives in Austin with her family. And I hate to be this guy, but her series is absolutely one you crave the next installment of. It's teen vampires and other paranormals, but with a feminist spin I can absolutely get behind. I always start devouring the next book as soon as it's out, but I'm not quite done with Court yet, so no spoilers in the chat, attendees, because I know Tracy's not going to spoil it, obviously. Court is the fourth and concluding book, according to the back cover, although Charm, coming July 26th, and Cherish, coming November 8th, are labeled as books 5 and 6. So maybe Tracy can explain that during the panel tonight. Court came out February 1st, and our signed copies just arrived in store today. So those of you who have already ordered from us, they are shipping out to you, probably not till Monday because tomorrow's Sunday, but we have them all ready to go for our delivery people. So they'll be on their way to you. So Tracy, can you tell us a little bit about the Crave Series? Probably not a whole lot about Court because spoilers, but about the Crave Series, and maybe explain those books 5 and 6.
Absolutely. So I laughed, of course, because you said Crave. And so it is the Crave series. And the basic premise is Grace, my main character, is a fish out of water. Her parents die when she is 17, and she has to go live in a boarding school in Alaska because that's where her guardian, her new guardian, her uncle is. And once she gets there, she realizes pretty quickly that things are not quite what they seem. She doesn't first go to vampires and witches and werewolves and dragons because, I mean, kind of out of her realm of what she thinks is real. She does, however, go to aliens right away, and then
ancient aliens,
right? And then finds out that no, that's not actually what's going on here, and that the hot guy who's not maybe her best friend is just happens to be a vampire, and her cousin happens to be a witch. and oh yeah, she's something too. None of the above, but definitely something. And as for the book situation, okay, Court was absolutely supposed to be she's here. Court was absolutely supposed to be the concluding book. Charm was always going to be a between the book. There's something that happens at the very end of Crave that everybody was in, and there's a 4-month gap between Crave and Crush, and a lot of the fans were asking for what happened during those 4 months, and that is how Charm came about. And then we had printed up, Court is a giant book. It is actually, if you open it up, you'll realize it's very small printing with absolutely no margins, because it's actually a 900 and some page book that we crammed into 700 and some pages. So it fits on the Target shelves. However, what we also did was we cut 65,000 words out of it to make it a 900 and some page book versus what it was when I was done writing it. And And we figured out that 60,000, 65,000 words was actually pretty important. And it answered some questions that I could not answer in the book. And that is how Cherish came about. Court was always intended to be the concluding book. Charm was a between the book, and then Cherish is, well, there's a lot of other stuff that kind of happened in Court that I didn't get a chance to get into because it was just too big. And that's why we have Cherish now.
Okay, so when I get to the end of Court, am I going to be like, dang it, now I have to wait until November, or will it feel kind of concluded and then that's just additional?
A lot of the arc is concluded, but there are 2 cliffhangers. There's actually a cliffhanger for Charm and a cliffhanger for Cherish. I'm sorry, I'm a terrible person. I know. I admit
It's
it.
concluded, but there's 2
horrible, and
cliffhangers.
apparently there's 2. It's not, one was not enough. One was not enough. There was a cliffhanger for Charm.
You sound like you might be a chaotic good also.
Right. Like, why have one when you could have 2?
And then correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't this originally supposed to be a trilogy?
Yes, it was originally supposed to be 3. And originally they were not supposed to be the size that they are, but apparently, I mean, I've always been wordy. I always write long, but there's a lot of mythology in these books, a lot of stuff and a lot of setting. And it's just, I mean, I always knew what the arc was going to be, but it just every scene I wrote, like I thought it would be 1 scene, it ended up being like 5. It's just a really big world to play in. So sorry, it is what it is.
I don't know why you're apologizing. I feel like we are all desperate for more of these. In fact, so desperate that there is a spin-off series coming still, right? Once you finish these.
There is a spin-off that will begin next year. Yes.
Excellent.
With one of the characters. I think if you've probably met her already if you're reading Court.
Yes.
You badass female vampire.
Yes.
I'm very excited about her.
Okay, and then last but not least, Aileen, sorry to put you on the spot, but we did everybody else's intro already. So USA Today bestselling author Aileen Erin is half Irish, half Mexican, and 100% nerd from Star Wars to Star Trek. She geeks out on Tolkien's linguistics and has a severe fascination with the supernatural. Aileen has a BS in radio, TV, film from the University of Texas at Austin, and an MFA in writing popular fiction from Seton Hill. She lives with her husband and daughter in Texas and spends her days doing her favorite things, reading books, creating worlds, and kicking ass. Aileen is the author of the hugely popular werewolf YA Alpha Girl series, which has sold more than 500,000 copies. She's the founder and CEO of Ink Monster, building worlds filled with girl power and happily ever afters. The Aunare Chronicles is an action-packed science fiction series you can't get enough of. Maite is the kind of heroine we all need in our lives. Beginning with Off Planet, the first 4 books are currently available, and book 5 on Destiny is coming March 15th. So Aileen, can you tell us a little bit about the Aunare Chronicles?
It's a future Earth. It starts out of Albuquerque, which I got the idea when I was living there for a little while. And it's kind of a dystopian what if space tech and SpaceX and Amazon kind of took over everything. And then it kind of explodes from there with aliens and other planets and kind of soulmates and that kind of thing. So it's got romance and action, and it's fun, hopefully. So yeah.
Of course it is. I have to ask, since you went to UT Austin, are you in Austin?
I am in, no, I am now, which is why I was like, because I am still learning the hill country. I am in Dripping Springs.
Oh, okay. I live in Austin, so.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh, this is so cool.
Yes, I didn't know you were in Austin. We could totally hang out, maybe.
You should totally hang out.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm newly back to Texas. Moved back a couple years ago. So and I spent a big chunk of last year in Ireland with my husband. So yeah, I'm still learning the hill country. I'm like, I know Austin, but I don't know where I am out here. So, yeah.
I love seeing your, like, are you storyboarding in the back there? Like,
I am, and I
like creeping on your pinboard. Like, what's up?
Yeah. I remembered really quickly before I turned on to like flip all of them around. I was like,
flip them over. You're like, oh no, they'll know the plot.
All the spoilers.
It's everything.
It's all there.
All,
Screenshotting and zooming in.
And then zoom in. It's like the whole entire book is right there. Like, that's dumb, Aileen. So really good background.
It is. No, it's great. And I'm snooping, so you're not wrong to flip that.
Yeah, I'm glad I flipped around. I'm glad you noticed, and I like don't feel bad about the few minutes that I spent like, no.
No, you did the right thing for sure.
So yeah.
All right. So since we're kind of on process already, why don't we start there? Like how, I mean, I know this is going to be a little different for you because while your book is in a series, you're not writing a series.
It's true.
So we're going to modify that question a little bit for you. But when you are building a whole world that you intend to go on for several books, like how, like, are you pantsers? Are you plotters? Like, is there a specific process you use? Is it kind of different for each book? How do you keep track of everything in these? And let's just
Jump
Tracy,
in.
do you want to
Just
start?
dive in.
Sure, I'll start. I was gonna say, I don't think, yeah, like I always wanted to be a pantser. Like I always say, like, oh, I'm a panther. Like that's just bullshit. I mean, yeah, right.
I'm chaotic. I'm carefree. As long as it goes according to the plan, I'm fine.
Right, exactly. I can be totally free as long as it goes according to the plan, and as long as I don't break the world, which is what my editor is always telling me about. Like, do not break your world. And so I learned somewhere, like, particularly, I mean, this is not my first series. I've done several series before, and I was always like, oh, I can fly by the seat of my pants, and then there were always mistakes, and I hated that. And then it took forever to fix them. So with the Crave series, because it is such a giant world, and because my editor and I really kind of plotted out where we wanted the whole series to go and what we really wanted it to do from the beginning, we have kept a very, very detailed Bible of like everything, because there's just so many characters. Like, you know, you remember your main characters, you have those people on lock, but like, I don't always remember the eye color of the Dragon Queen, for example, you know, who we've met, you know, maybe twice. So it's like, I keep a really, really detailed Bible of the world and the characters, and kind of go from there. And that helps a lot. But I do very much, we do have it all plotted out before I really sit down to write. And I deviate, of course. I don't think there's anything wrong with going off book, but I think that you do, when you're trying to keep cohesiveness in a series, you do need to know where it's going. Even though it sounds so much more romantic to be just, oh yes, I just sit down and write whatever I want.
My training's in art history, and my training is like to be an academic. So I love the research part, and I always had this guy, and it's not over a whole series, but I have this guiding light of, I wanted to show the medieval world as it was. And I wanted to show the medieval world as it was, where the center of the world was at the time, which was not in medieval Europe, but variously throughout Asia, North Africa, West Africa, depending on where you are. And it was a really cosmopolitan, pluralistic place. And it was a really global, interconnected world in a way that we don't see and that we don't talk about. And that was really, really important to me when I constructed the world. And I wanted it to feel like that. I also had this medievalist professor that said something that just really stuck with me, which was, we aren't smarter than we were back then. We just think differently. So when you're talking about the medieval world, it's like before secular humanism. It's before thinking about the world the way we do. Like, we have science in this very specific idiom. So if you're talking about medieval Islam, they had science as well, but they use the language of alchemy or God to understand it. And so I really wanted to take that first person present feel of a YA contemporary, where you are in the moment and you're living through it and you feel like you're there, and bring that to historical. So we kind of I feel like what's the word? We kind of put history on a pedestal. We put it on a pedestal and we let it ossify and feel static. And I wanted it to break that apart and feel alive. So it felt really important to do the research and have that depth in there. And then, much like Tracy said, like, have a lot of stuff in a Bible, in a document, in like one place where I could go check it, but then sort of try to forget it as I was writing. So it wasn't that I was going by the seat of my pants. It wasn't that I hadn't done tons and tons of research or that I didn't ask questions throughout, but trying to then take that and make it feel present and not let me tell you about this thing. Instead, it's like, this is how this person thinks of this. This is how they move through the world. And if they encountered something that felt foreign to me, I tried to stop and be like, how is this familiar to her? How is this familiar to her that this would be normal? Like, what is different when she's encountering someone new for her, and what is actually familiar to her that would feel really foreign to us if we saw it? And that was kind of the fun of it. I mean, it was a hard problem and it was hard work, but it was the fun of trying to solve that feeling of it. But yeah, having a single document where you put everything, when you suddenly go, oh my gosh, what year was that? You're like, what month was it that they had this battle? So you're not just like scrambling. Also very important for when you're going back into the facts.
Very early in my writing career, I'll just say this really fast. I don't mean to, take anybody else.
No, please jump in. Yeah.
Very early in my writing career, I went to see Nora Roberts speak, and she talked about how she did, because she sets each book in a different place, and how she just did like copious amounts of research and read like all of these books. And it was very often only to put 6 or 7 sentences throughout the entire book.
Just throw it away.
But you didn't know what you were going to need until you got it, until you read everything and knew it. And then when you sat down to read, some of it just kind of came. And that just, like, your process sounded so much like that, right? And yeah, it's kind of what I've always done too. You just you learn everything you can about it. That doesn't mean you don't look up questions as you're going, but like you learn everything about it beforehand, and then you kind of let it gel in the back of your head, and then you kind of sprinkle it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's like a confidence thing too, where you're like, I know the answer to this, so I won't stress about it while I'm writing. And then it probably won't come up because my brain's like, this, you don't have to worry about how boots work in the year 1100. Because like your brain will do that. You're like, did they have boots? Did they lace up? Oh my gosh. When is the invention of the zipper? And you're just like panicking, right? I've done that before where you're like, wait, when was kissing invented? Hold on. Like, you're just like, oh no, are people joking? Like there's a time where kissing was invented. So you just kind of yeet yourself into the void with stuff like that. So I think it's like finding that confidence to know, what you're doing, even if there's so much more you don't know.
No, I want to know when kissing was invented.
Me too. I didn't know that.
I haven't done research.
Like, don't start me, please. I want everyone else to answer.
Okay. Judy, are you a plotter or a pantser?
We'll come back to it. We'll circle back.
I'm such an admirer of people who write historical fiction because of all of the focus on like those details, because that is what really stopped me from like writing like Chinese inspired fantasy for a long time. Is just because I would do this research and then my mind would be frozen with fear that what I'm writing is like inaccurate or not authentic. But I think with fantasy, I guess it was a lot of doing the research, and because that really resonated with me about what Amina said about just going in and finding out as much as you can, like immersing yourself in this period of time where they have, and then knowing too when I would have the freedom to break free from it and to like move on and reinterpret or reimagine it, and that was really freeing as well. So I'm a plotter because I usually do my research as I'm writing my synopsis, and my outline is usually really, really long, but because it grows as I'm researching and finding out all these little things and details, and as I'm building the world as well, because the world building comes to me first. I don't have the plot or the characters yet. And then, so I have the world, and then I think about, okay, where's the story that I want to tell, and then what's the best character to tell that story with. So it's kind of juggling all of those moving parts. And then as I'm writing that, I also think about, okay, so I have to look up this little detail and then bring that in. But I found that it actually felt very natural to me once I stopped being paralyzed by that fear of being, true to a particular historical time period. It was like, well, it's inspired by this certain dynasty, but I can go a little bit further into the future and pull a little bit from that and be inspired by that part too, or maybe go into some of the folklore that is maybe not specific to this particular region, but just taking spinning off of that. And so that is what I enjoy playing with the most. And I think in the first book, I'm very in a sense constrained, because a lot of the action and everything, most of the story takes place in the palace. So I was able to kind of build the atmosphere of that, but it was helpful because my character as a commoner didn't have that background, so everything was new to her, and so I can kind of delight in that too, as of just shaping that world and seeing it through her eyes. And then in this is not, I guess it's not really a spoiler, in the sequel though, we can actually explore the empire, and then she goes into the world, and I really enjoyed that as well, into just expanding and exploring and then building off of what I created in the first book. So I liked that, because I don't it's only, the series is 2 books, and I feel like that's where I'm comfortable with. I'm just thinking about going like beyond that. I'm happy with the story that I told. I got to see the palace and the capital, and then expand a little bit with the adventures that she goes on into the world, but her story, Ning's story, is concluded. And that was, it was very satisfying to write, to just keep that arc in mind.
Does that mean there's a lot of courtly intrigue in the first one?
There is. Yes, there's a lot of political maneuverings and secret missions.
Secrets.
Yes.
I'm like so not sneaky, so I love reading books where people are like spying, being secretive.
And Aileen?
So I love that Tracy said about early on not keeping the Bible, the series Bible, because I made that mistake with the Alpha Girl series, and was constantly going back through and rereading and like doing a search and finding the names, and it was a hot mess. I don't advise that for anyone. It was bad. That's bad. So this one, for the Nari Chronicles, I do have a Bible where I put, anytime I describe somebody, I drop it into this spreadsheet, and I like am keeping track of everything. It's so much better. That was not wise. But you learn as you go, right? In terms of like structuring things and series, I start out world building as well. I like building the world, what's going on there politically, what's going on, like who are the main players, and then finding the right character. So I kind of feel you on that one too. And then I do a very, like, this is my outline, like it's a sentence on each note card, and that's it. Like I know some people that write like 95-page outlines, and I'm like, that's your first draft. Like I don't even know what you were doing with that outline, but my outline would fit on like a page and a half. And then I kind of have an idea of the overarching theme that I want for the series as a whole. Sometimes things change, as they always do. You get off track, and hopefully it's all for the better. So yeah, that's kind of my process, but it's much cleaner now with this series, now that I'm keeping that lovely series Bible, which is really essential.
And putting it in one place, that was my first problem. Like I used to scatter it in places, and then I'd stop to go looking for the note. And I think putting it in one place is
in one place. I love like the one tool that I'm really loving is Airtable. It's like a spreadsheet, but it's and I love it. Spreadsheet app. So I can like have different tabs, and it's on my phone, on my iPad, on like everything.
Mhm.
So I can always keep track. So that's really, it's been
It's
a
helpful.
lifesaver on this
Yeah,
series.
I don't use Airtable, but I know people who do for that reason. You can use Notion very similarly, or
Yeah.
people put it all in Scrivener, so it's just like all in one place.
Yeah, I love
You
Scrivener.
can search it, unlike
Fantastic.
handwriting.
Yeah.
That's really smart. I didn't remember that. Mine is like a folder with hundreds of links.
I've done that too.
So I really need to get more organized. So I am learning from everyone.
It's all in one spot though. If
Yeah.
you put it all in one place, that's
you're
still
already
a
ahead
huge
of the
win.
game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You didn't need to learn that lesson the hard way.
Yeah. I learned that lesson really the hard way. It was agonizing. By the time I was like book 9, I was like, what did I do to myself? Like, why am I
I'm just like
still
picturing you on a Kindle, like term searching a character, trying to find your
That's
original
exactly what I'm like,
description.
hair.
And
Let's
then being
search
like,
hairs.
wait, I introduced this character in book 2, not book 1. Oh no.
I'm like, what did I do? And I'm like calling my editor. Do you remember when this character first, were they in? No, it's a bad idea. So it's good to learn from your mistakes. I love now having the Bible.
So when I was selecting the authors for this panel, I realized that I maybe have a bit of a bias in the series that I love. Because one of the things all of your books have in common is having these really strong, confident heroines, right? Like, and I say confident, but Tracy, I'm looking at you. Confident maybe is not the right word, but where she really believes she has to try, even if she doesn't know that she can. And I think that's true for all of your heroines, that even when they get in situations where they're not sure they're going to prevail, they know that it's their job to try it. They're not looking for someone else to take over for them. And I love that, as it turns out. So can you each speak a little bit to your heroines maybe, and like where the inspiration for these strong young women comes from?
I love anyone who has no quit. I think that that's like always something that I admire. I admire anyone who gets in the arena, and I admire anyone that screws up and then picks themselves up, dusts themselves off, and goes back at it. There's like a gif of Captain Marvel that's like falls down. It's like those images of her from the trailer where she keeps falling, and then the image right after where she keeps standing up. I'm gonna like teary thinking about it. But it's like that idea, like you fall down 7 times and you get up 8. And I think that I find that heroic, and I find it heroic when someone decides to try, even if they know they might not be able to do it. I think there's something really big and brave and hopeful in that. And there's something about someone who decides they're going to try even when the deck is stacked against them, because those are the cards they have and they're not going to stop playing, and no one can make them stop playing. It's like the one thing they know they've got. It was also really important for me. I grew up not understanding a lot of the, I guess prejudice is probably the word, about Muslim women and how they are seen as oppressed, because I grew up with so many just like matriarchs in my family, and they're just so many badass women. Like I put a line about the sister knowing how to wrestle snakes with her bare hands. Like my grandmother did that. Like there were women who, even in the late 18th century or in the late 19th century, late 1800s, which is a time when like women didn't walk around unchaperoned in Europe, where they were walking around unchaperoned with weapons. And if someone catcalled them, they literally were like, say it to my face. Like they pointed their weapon at a dude's groin and were like, say it again to my face. And the dude's like slunk off. I'm like, those are the women of my family. And that was normal to me. And it took until I was much older to realize that was not everyone's conception of what it is to be a Muslim woman and what it is to move around as a woman in a body in a Muslim country. And it felt really, really important to show this other type of woman, these other essentially warrior women and tribal warrior women who fought and who were brave and who were mouthy and who took risks and took chances. And I think even when we talk about European Christian women, we think like, oh, did women fight in the Middle Ages? And it's like, even women on the sort of classic crusader side, like that was a way for young women to go on an adventure and have it be masked as like, no, I'm doing this for God, but like really I want to travel and see the world, right? Like it was just this time where they could do that. And that isn't the point of view I'm stuck in, but I think it's really important to think about how these women have always existed and we pretend like they haven't. And I think it's really important to remind people that we've forgotten that that history is real, not that it never existed. And so I guess that's my soapbox. And I keep standing on it.
For me, it's a good soapbox to be on. I mean, to be honest. For me, Crave is very feminist in nature, the whole series, right? And certainly by the time you get to court and the end of court, I mean, I don't think there's any denying it. But for me, what I really, I loved a lot of what you said, because that whole like Grace is my main character is the epitome of getting knocked down and getting back up one more time than she's been knocked down, right? I love that. But I also, in general, wanted to showcase all kinds of different feminine strength. Like we tend to have an idea of what is a strong woman and what she looks like. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, I love women. I think women are kick-ass in all their different, personalities and forms. And it's one of the reasons I love writing ensemble casts, besides the whole idea of the family you found, right? The family you've made versus the family you're born into. But also the idea of like, you look at Eden, who is my kick-ass, take no prisoners, slay anything in her path dragon, right? That's one absolute amazing version of female strength. But then you have Macy, the cheerleader witch, who is super perky and super happy and super supportive and super nurturing. And she can also, cast a spell with the best of them. And she can also, her strength is no less than Eden's strength. Grace is, I will always get back up, no matter how hard it is, no matter how many mistakes I make. I will always just get back up and go again, because it is the right thing to do. And I need to take care of these people who around me, or yeah, I just think that or even Izzy, right? With her just, I've got to take care of myself because nobody else has ever taken care of me. And what does that look like? And where did that come from? I just wanted to showcase all women in all their different glories, and show that there's no one kind of right way to be a woman, because I think that's a super important message for girls today, that there's no one right way to be a strong, powerful woman. You just have to figure out your way. And that is the best that you can or should ever hope to do.
I love that. I'm like an older woman. I still felt very validated by your saying that. I was like, thank you. Thanks, Tracy.
Eileen?
So yeah, I don't know how to follow those two, but but yes, I mean, I think I really admire somebody who doesn't like give up. And I think it's important for girls, to realize that, like, even though it's hard, even though, everyday life is really tough, you come across a multitude of challenges, but giving up is like not an option. So you just have to get through it no matter how tough it is. So I put my characters through torture. It's really awful. I'm so mean to them, but it's like, but they get up, and Maite has a phrase that she says to herself, like, I don't quit, not ever, getting up. And she just keeps getting up, even though she keeps getting knocked down. In the end, it's all going to work out great for her, but it was hard getting there. And every challenge you face in life is hard, and everything you do in life is hard. So it's not an easy road. So it's kind of like, you want to prepare people for the road and give them kind of some sort of inspiration that, like, if they did it, I can do it. If they can keep picking themselves up and like, wow, that seemed awful, like, I can do this next thing. So that's kind of where I come from with it. So.
And she doesn't know it's going to turn out okay. She has to do it not knowing that. Yeah,
Yeah,
like we
yeah.
believe, but she doesn't
We
know.
believe, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that truth about how any of us live our lives, right? We just have to believe we're doing the
Mhm.
right thing and that it's all going to be okay in the end.
You'll have to be around Ted Lasso.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah.
I love that show. It's fantastic.
Judy?
Yeah, I think that everybody's comments really appeal to me in writing. Like strong female characters, like a strong women, but it's I think for my character for Ning, she starts out with a lot of self-doubt and just going into a strange place, a place where she knows no one, and having to face the monumental task of feeling like a fraud and an imposter, and then overcoming that. And I wanted to write that because I didn't want somebody who was just already skilled and like confident right out of the gate. Because what's the appeal of that, just to see somebody falter and kind of have to discover their own strength is what really appeals to me in the books that I read and the other stories that I write. And as one of my inspirations is like the wuxia genre, which is like Chinese martial arts. But even though in that genre, though, you have like these badass women waving swords around and flying and doing all of these things, I wanted to explore a different part, like that. Yeah, you don't have to be like this fierce swordswoman all the time. That what if your magic is different, and maybe you're in a more supporting role, but using the magic to kind of figure out your place, and then also and being you can protect the people that you care about, but it's just not in a way that you initially anticipated, and not in the way that is typically portrayed in this particular genre. And so, and another thing that was really important for me when I was writing this book too was having really strong relationships with other girls. So with her sister, and as well as with the girls that she meets along the way, just because I just really like the idea of found family and building relationships where you go, where like the friendships that you have with other women are what empowers you to become a better version of yourself. So that was also something I really wanted to keep in mind. As I was writing my book, is that that just women should relate to and build up each other. So that was another part.
I love that. Female friendships is such a powerful part of Crave too, because writing has given me the most amazing female friendships of my life. In the gosh, has it been 15 years? The 15 years since my first book came out. Wow. I've just developed this incredible community of female writers around me, and I just wanted to show the strength and power of that, and what it feels like to be part of that community, and that girls can lift each other up, women can lift each other up, that it's not, you see so much that, oh, we're catty, or we're this, or we're backbiting, or it doesn't have to be like that. I came up in, and I know RWA is not a good a good organization, at this point. It's got a lot of toxicity around it, but I came up in the very, early days of my career 15 years ago in it, and I never asked somebody a question that didn't try to help me, that didn't give me good advice, that didn't do their best to point me in the right direction, to help me learn about the business. And I will forever be grateful for all of those women who kind of helped me get to where I am today.
I saw Julia Quinn's our talk on writing sparkling dialogue like back in 2016, and I still use it. It's so good. So yeah,
there's a lot of brilliant women in that organization who've been a part of that organization.
Yeah, it's like there was a lot of really great people that the organization did strange things to, and I think that's always good to like separate those things out.
Yeah, I I went as well to RWA. That's how I started deciding how to write and getting my process down. I was also an MFA student, but I learned so much about like the business, and those women, you're right. They were really great, always very helpful. You know, like always willing to tell you like real facts about what they were doing, what was working, what was not. I mean, I made great friends there.
I also think it
now,
helps when there's no sorry.
yes, now it's chaos, but but I miss those earlier, you know, like 10, 15 years ago days of RWA.
I mean, no place better to learn the business if you didn't know it, if you didn't come up in it, right? Like not just like craft too, of course, but the business of it, like what's the best way to get an agent? What's the best way to learn how to query and write a synopsis, and what to expect after you're first published. Now, those strong female friendships are really, really a blessing.
But I think it helps too to not be the only girl on the team, right? Like I think that's also like that's such a like female centered environment when you think about how many people who identify as women who are in RWA or at the time were and I think that's that same thing where like we've all created a cast of characters that has more than one girl on the team, and it's really, really nice to have that space to make lots of type of young women, to show when there's more than one woman on the team, you're not competing for one slot. And so you don't get that fighting, because when you see movie after movie and there's only one girl, or there's only one person of color, or there's like only one slot for you, you can understand why like it would warp your brain and you start feeling that's my seat, you can't have it, right? And so it's fun to instead be like, there's room for everyone and everyone can join in, and we can actually band together and be stronger together than we were like on our own. And I think that that's what's so fun about an ensemble cast. And I love that Judy took the genre and took the like side character and made her the main character and realized she was the main character of a story. That's like so beautiful. I love that. You're not just the girl in the tea shop. Don't worry. You have the lead of your own story.
Adventures too.
Different adventures, but they're yours.
I am so glad I got to be here for this conversation, you guys. Like, I'm loving everything about this. And it actually segues really well into my next question, which is probably going to be a little controversial. But since you've created these ensemble casts that you love so much, do any of you, obviously your main characters are probably your favorites, but do you have a favorite other character from your series? Aileen, you go first. You look like you're ready to answer that question.
I like Roan a lot from he's like the main character's best friend. I love him to death. Like I want to have
write. He seems like
he's so really fun to write. And he's just really, really great and funny and like light-hearted, and she's, you know, way more badass than him, but he's always like kind of keeping up with her. I love him. So yeah, there's definitely other characters. I don't know. I'm not going to speak for y'all, but I love the main character. Don't get me wrong, but I do love. There's ones that have a special place in my heart.
Judy?
I think for me, I'd had a lot of fun writing the friend that Ning meets when she's in the competition. Lian, she's a little bit younger and reminds her of her sister, but in a different way, and she's just kind of an outsider too, even though she comes from a wealthier background. And it was just fun to write their interactions because of how they kind of build off of each other. And then so Nathan's kind of like a little bit of a stick in the mud, and then Liam's just kind of pulling her to different places, forcing her to go to the kitchen and harass them for food and things like that. So it just kind of pulls her out of her comfort zone. But then she's also, because of she's younger and reminds her sister, she's also a little bit protective of her. So it's just a really fun just relationship to work with and to build off of. So
Amina?
Sounds so tender. You know, I have like an opposite answer, which is I love my really prickly, angry older sister character that Rahma's like always looking after. It felt really fun to reverse that and like have the younger sibling be a little more pragmatic and is like kind of following her sister Zena, who is like much more of an idealist and much more like charges in. And it was fun to flip that a little bit. And I loved watching them bicker. I loved a relationship where there's a lot of found family, but also the idea that you continue to pick and tend to the relationships you are given at birth, and like what that looks like even when you're frustrated by your sister and you continue to pick her and you continue to try to make it work, like when it's not always working but two people are trying. I love that moment in family, both found and given. But I think she's also the most like probably my like really prickly YA contemporary heroines. And I love angry girls, and I love girls that I think make a lot of people uncomfortable. I think those are always my favorite because they're angry and with good reason, but we don't want to listen to why they're angry. And so we call them all of these other names for that. And I think I find it really cathartic to write angry girls, along with Tenny, who's really joyful and a ray of sunshine and just like is the heart. And then, you know, putting a nice, joyful, like himbo knight on the squad too, who like is just so excited to be included. Like I love all of those characters, but I think there's something about prickly girls that I just have a very soft spot for.
Well, I think if you write like a really, really strong ensemble, like you really embrace the concept of the ensemble cast, right? Then what you end up doing is creating a bunch of characters who are, I mean, yes, you're telling the story, like I'm telling the story from Grace's point of view, but you know, Flint and Jackson and Eden and you could tell the whole story from their point of views. And I think it would be as interesting and as exciting. It would be different, and there would be different lessons to be learned. But I think that it would be just as exciting and developing, you know, what's going on with them that you don't really get to do when you're writing in first person, right? But if is there a character that I yeah, I have a lot of them. Honestly, I can't ever pick one. I mean, I love Will Hudson's like also the main character, right? He's the hero, and I love Hudson like a ridiculous amount. Because I also have a soft spot for prickly boys who are I have a soft spot for damaged boys. I have a soft spot for damaged boys. And there's a lot of damage there. There's a lot of damage in Flint, even though he always has a smile on his face. And in Jackson, right? Yeah, I have a soft spot for damaged boys. And who don't take that damage out on women, who don't, you know, there's a difference between, you know, a damaged guy and an asshole guy. And I learned the difference, thankfully, many years ago. And I work really hard in my books not to write the asshole hero. You know, I know that, and I know that there are you know, it's part of the genre and that, but for me, I think it's so important to show young girls what a good, strong, healthy relationship looks like, and it can look, you know, it has many different appearances maybe, but what it is to be respected by the man or the boy that you were with, and what it is to be able to not just hope for that respect, but to expect it, that it is your God-given right as a woman and as a human being to have a partner that loves you and respects you and supports you and does all of those things for you. So yeah, I have a soft spot for boys like that.
Doesn't ask you to be less than who you are. I think
yes, who doesn't
always
ask you to be less than who you are.
Yeah. You know, like two people
Absolutely.
that ask each other to be their best selves, right? Like accepting that you're flawed and understand, like giving you that grace, but also, you know, saying you can show up as your higher self, not being less of who you are, I think is always so powerful in love, because it's someone who sees you and sees the best in you, but doesn't cloak who you are. And I think that that's always
in any kind of friendship or relationship, and and not just heterosexual, obviously, or and there is a character in Court. His name is Daoud, and he's my homage to my father. I said he and I meant they, but I was thinking about my father. My mother died a couple of days ago, and I'm sorry, I've just been really locked in my father's head. So I apologize when I talk about Dawood. They are an homage to my father, and they are not the strongest and not the best fighter, but they are the cleverest. And I love that about them, because again, it's that other kind of strength, there are all kinds of strength, and there are all kinds of ways to be. And yeah, I have a soft spot for characters like that.
Do too. There's such a resilience in that. And there's such a hope in that. I think that's my favorite thing about writing for young people, is there's this little flame of hope in that, even when it feels like all of the light is out. And there's something really beautiful in that. So
Finding your way through that.
No matter how much you guys torture your characters along the way.
Yeah, which we all do. I think, who had said that? That said they love to torture their characters. I was like, here's a thing, all right,
Guilty,
and
guilty.
maybe we don't let it out to play in the real world, but it's so much fun to mess with our characters and torture them.
And that's where the good stuff comes out, then you can see them really shine, because through the hard stuff they do, in whatever means that they do overcome. Just hopeful.
It is hopeful. Yeah. My father always said that too. He's like, we don't pick our tragedies, but we pick how we react to them. We pick what we do next. We don't pick the cards we're dealt, but we pick if we keep going.
That's a really lovely sentiment.
It is. It's a very poetic and Arab sentiment.
Yes.
They love to sound a little melodramatic when they're giving you.
They really do. My father was Syrian, and there's a lot of that in there. A lot of that drama in there.
Don't let a melodramatic Arab man. It's like, don't stop the train. Let it.
Don't stop the train.
Gotta recite some poetry. It's gonna be okay. That's good.
All right, ladies. We just have 1 minute left, so real fast. This is a series we love panel, and I am so grateful that we got to get together, all of you ladies who have written books in series that I absolutely adore, because I'm going to be honest, we could just call it the series I love panel. But are there any series you guys are loving that you want to tell readers about before we close out? Other than your own, obviously, because we've already done
ours, obviously, all of ours.
It is totally okay to say you're writing so much you don't have time to read, because I know sometimes that's a thing, depending where you're at in the process.
Chloe Gong. I love Chloe Gong's series. I think it's awesome.
I'm just thinking about like a series that I've read. That's what I'm shuffling through my brain right now. Like, hold on. I'm like, because I do still read, but I'm like, are they series? Are they standalone?
Yeah, I started a lot of series, but then I'm like, I try to finish them, but everything kind of.
I enjoy Sarah J. Maas. I like her court series a lot. But I have to say that when I'm writing a lot, I usually just stick with Lenora, with Nora Roberts and JD Robb, because it's like it doesn't.
I bought the new one today. I bought the new one today. It just came out.
Yeah, I've just started reading that one today too. So it's just like there's something comforting about her writing that doesn't interfere with my own writing. So I don't ever want to bleed in or borrow something from somebody else. But Nora does a great job. It's comforting and it doesn't bleed into.
That's how I feel
So,
about Sarah McLean, actually. I do that
yes.
too, where I can just read her books and not worry about it like ending up in my work. It's like
Yeah.
sort of
Nice.
off genre enough that I'm like,
It's like over there. So it's like
Mhm.
I'm not gonna accidentally
gonna
borrow
end
or
up.
take anything unknowing. Not that I wouldn't do it on purpose, but it could filter through.
Get in
That's
your
my
head.
fear.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I don't want that getting in my head. So when I'm in between books and like just researching, then I'll like start picking up and seeing what else is going on, and I'll go to Barnes and Noble, what's on the shelves and that kind of thing. But when I'm like really deep in writing, I stick to like Nora Roberts and her JD Robb series too. So.
Yeah, I was reading Chloe Gong, and I've started the first one. That's very readable, very, very like deep, bingeable. Oh man. Oh, and I've been reading oh my gosh, the Camelot Rising series. Speaking of like female heroes who have a different kind of strength and who are like usually just like very feminine and not seen as the lead role, and it's sort of from the perspective of Guinevere, and it's Kirsten White, and I've been really enjoying that too because I'm not drafting, so I just have to like find the series and not the standalones in my brain. It's like a little Rolodex spinning.
Oh, and
like a click wheel going, like thinking is the computer gonna
Bridget
solve?
Kemmerer, A Curse So Dark, and I don't know that
As I Darken is her historical.
Yeah, she's amazing. I think her writing is so good, and
she's
she
a
had just
master of
interviewed
genre.
me for Barnes and Noble, and so I had picked up her book, A Curse So Dark and Lonely, and I just was like, I'm tearing through that series because I think it's so good.
Yeah, just masterful.
All right. Well, thank you, ladies, so much for being here with us tonight. I had such a good time, almost teared up a few times. So also that, it's just like your books, all the feels. Thank you, attendees, for coming. There is a link in the chat, or you can just go to the event page on our webpage. If you haven't ordered any of the featured titles, we have all of the ones that are out in the world currently in stock. Some of them obviously are pre-orders, but you can pre-order those through our website and we'll get them to you the day they come out. And I hate to end this way, but for those of you who signed up early for the event, you know that there was a fifth author that was supposed to be present with us. And she passed away last Thursday. So I do just still want to talk about her books because I was really excited about having her. And so I just kind of want to mention that, okay, it's going to do the digital. Seventh Son by Lainey Forbes. We knew she had cancer when she signed up to do the event, but she thought she had longer with us than she did. These books are gorgeous. They are these lush fantasy novels that are an amalgamation of kind of Mesoamerican mythology. They are just beautiful. So even though she can't be with us today, I did just want to mention her titles because she was committed to the panel, and they're just beautiful. So sorry to end on a sad note there. But I'm really grateful for the literature we have in our lives. I'm really grateful for all of these great feminist books that we have available to us today. And I'm really grateful that everyone was here with us tonight. So thank you, everybody. And everybody have a good night.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you so much.